Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the TreeCoin Podcast, and welcoming to another guest that we've got on today, Michael from Ketsa Coleman. Thanks for coming on, Michael.
Thanks, Demian. Good to be here.
Yeah, great. Well, it was back at a climate tech pitch night with Climate Salad in Melbourne that I didn't meet Michael, but he saw the pitch that I did and got in touch after that. So that was how it kind of began this conversation a little while back. So to introduce Michael, he's from the legal sector, corporate background, and you founded your own practice 6 years back.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd like to kick off by is just talking about your transition from corporate legal and now into the kind of climate tech startup advisory space. What excites you most about this sector that you saw through the pitch at TreeCoin, forest tokenisation? And how do you think the TreeCoin approach could make a bit of a standout in the climate tech landscape?
Well, thanks, Demian. To go back to your explanation of where we met, the reason I was at the Climate Salad Tech Night and I was impressed by your pitch was that I'd started my own law firm because in a large law firm it's impossible to run side projects. The partnership demands complete attention. So I'd left Telstra about 5 years before, after 15 or so years as a technology and consumer protection lawyer, looking to spread my wings into the business world more broadly. And after some work in renewables and land management and development, I realised that was a more interesting and dynamic place to work than pure technology and telecommunications. So I was looking for clients that had innovative ideas, working in technology, but also working for sustainability and renewable energy and so on. And come across a handful of businesses started by former colleagues or friends that were in that space, were looking for a lawyer but didn't have the funds to pay a law firm partner. So I've got a couple of what we call sweat equity interests in other businesses, and I was interested in TreeCoin for a few reasons. One is that one of the enterprises that I was involved with was a West Australian-based fellow that I've done a lot of work with over the years, and we'd been trying to develop a blockchain token-based carbon reduction unit on an open market, and had very little success. It's really hard to achieve all the things you need to do. We built a platform, but the user experience was terrible, and we had no marketing and no budget and really not a business plan. So we'd abandoned that as being too difficult. And so TreeCoin was, as you know, when I heard your pitch about TreeCoin, having done that work, solved a lot of those problems, and being several years down the track from where myself and my partner in Perth had managed to get up to, that was immediately the interest that I had. The reason that I approached you after the talk, and it fit my practice really well. So I was interested potentially as an investor, and also as a provider of legal advice to TreeCoin, and TreeCoin's a great fit.
That's great. So we've had a few people come feedback to us that the TreeCoin model is something that they've thought about in the past, and it's good. You know, they reach out to us to partner or to kind of collaborate, because we have gone further down the line. So what is it about the tokenisation of carbon reduction that you see as a scale up opportunity? Like why is that high impact?
Yeah, no, I'd reached out when I started my law firm, and I was interested in land conservation and land management initiatives generally, and I've managed to pick up a handful of clients who are working in that space. But a recurring theme, talking to the CEOs and the finance people at the and their prospective clients, so large land managers and philanthropists who donate properties to be used in conservation. A recurring theme is how difficult and expensive it is to enter the regulated carbon credit market. So to to do even the baseline studies on a large property, which is perhaps a farming property or mixed-use property that has a decent amount of vegetation, which the owner wants to conserve, but also they're looking at tree planting and reforestation initiatives. The costs of doing the baseline studies alone, just to see whether there's a prospective revenue stream that might come in from growing carbon, so both soil carbon and tree carbon are the two areas that land managers, there's a potential crop there, the potential sort of cash earning capacity on the property, but the barrier to entry is prohibitive. And I've been involved in a handful of projects where people had given up because they'd spent $40,000 on an initial baseline survey, only to find that they'd be spending that amount of money every year for several years until there was any prospect of significant revenue as the trees grow. So TreeCoin struck me as just not altogether removing barriers to entry. It's always going to cost something to set up a carbon farming initiative, but it's a much more efficient model because it doesn't have to meet the regulated market requirements, which isn't to say that it's a pirate scheme or that there's no requirements. TreeCoin does meet those global standards for reforestation initiatives, but I think the market is screaming out for a solution that doesn't require you to go to KPMG to get advice and engage an environmental consulting firm and undertake all that very high cost. If you're the Packers or the Australian Agricultural Company, you've got that kind of funding, but most landholders don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that empowering the smaller, medium landowners that have these untapped opportunities globally, in Australia and around the world, is absolutely core to the disruption that we are all about. So yeah, it's good to hear that feedback from the market about the lived experience. It's unfortunate that legitimate players have had to abandon efforts, but that's what kind of who we're here to serve is those players and everyone else in between that needs and deserves an easy to use system that doesn't require long-term legal restrictions on land. It just allows them to get rewarded for the forests that they're either already doing or that they could do more of, and the carbon benefits from all of that. So yeah, it's definitely an area ripe for disruption, and I know you've even participated as having purchased some TreeCoin and retired it as well. Maybe just talk about that experience.
Well, that's something that I was interested in going through the process, which, as I say, my colleague and I have been attempting to develop, of actually generating carbon credits, and then one of the applications for a carbon credit, and probably ultimately the main one, is to retire in order to offset the carbon emissions that are generated by business activity. So I've been through that process and gone onto the TreeCoin website, set up my wallet, and actually been put in contact with the project provider for the TreeCoins that I purchased, which you don't. I think ultimately in a global market that one-to-one relationship between the TreeCoin provider, who's actually running the reforestation project, and the purchaser, it doesn't need to be there every time. Like, that's what the blockchain's for, so that there's traceability and auditability of the credentials of the TreeCoin, but you don't need to be introduced to the project owner personally. But that, with TreeCoin, that actually was possible, and I swapped emails for over a week or two with the project provider in Tanzania. Kenya, that's right. Yeah. And went through that process, and I actually need I haven't yet retired. I've still got the coins in my wallet. I haven't yet retired them, so that's something that I'll talk to my partner Ketsa Coleman about doing that to offset and document that we've offset the emissions that we generate in our legal practice.
Yeah, that's great. And there's a few examples popping up where SMEs are purchasing, retiring TreeCoin for exactly that reason, and we've got a feature set that enables the users to do that themselves. So that's another kind of simplification of the overall system, that the less of a third-party auditor, or the third-party cost is very much reduced. You can still have a third-party check on your carbon emissions footprint calculation, for example, but that, in terms of SMEs that are, I guess, retiring, is to do the right thing by their own internal standards, but also be recognised. We've talked a bit about a kind of overly regulated space where the schemes, so Australia's in particular got climate active, but there's many schemes around the world which, as you know, take probably too much time, effort and cost to participate in. While it's important that businesses do this, it's also important that businesses are enabled and empowered to do this.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the clients that I've done quite a lot of work for in this space over the last couple of years is an alliance of private land managers called the Australian Land Conservation Alliance, and they're a highly reputable, publicly facing organisation, so they won't mind me talking about some of their work. That they are participating at the highest level in various government initiatives to establish good practice for carbon emissions, and I love that work, and I think the regulated market's very important. But if you look at the calibre of the people around the table who are able to send staff on projects for months at a time to work with the national panel of experts, there's only a handful of organisations in Australia with those sort of capabilities, and the vast majority of Australian businesses and local councils and universities and public sector organisations and agencies don't have the skills and shouldn't need to have the skills to participate at that level. So there's an enormous unmet demand, I think, for ordinary businesses, SMEs and scout groups, local organisations of incorporated associations, tennis clubs, who don't have subject matter experts who can participate in national roundtables, but want to have an easy, enjoyable user experience that will lead them into being able to figure out what to do with their carbon footprint and how to offset that. And I think TreeCoin, there'll be multiple solutions to this, but TreeCoin's the best one that I've come across in my time in the sector.
Yeah, well, I take that feedback really warmly, and thanks for your support, Michael. I think that's pretty much a wrap, and I just want to thank you for coming on, taking the time out. Look forward to having you on again in the future sometime, and some of the guests that you've recommended we reach out to, we'll see if we can wrap up. In the meantime, everybody, subscribe to the channel, check out our socials, and look out for the next podcast from TreeCoin. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Demian.
See ya.
See ya.